Have you ever felt that little voice inside you telling you that it's easier to give up, to blend in, to settle for mediocrity? Imagine living a life constantly surrendering to fear, excuses, and comfort. This, according to Friedrich Nietzsche, is the kind of weakness he despised the most. Nietzsche wasn't concerned with physical frailty or poverty, nor was he cruel to those who faced hardships beyond their control. His anger, his disdain, targeted something deeper, the surrender of your mind and spirit to laziness, complacency, and the comfort of excuses. He saw a world filled with people willing to follow the herd, to accept life without struggle, and to never confront their own limitations. Nietzsche challenged the comfortable illusions we tell ourselves. He believed that weakness, in its truest sense, is a moral and spiritual failure. It's the decision to let life happen to you, rather than shaping your life through courage, discipline, and self-overcoming. He called this the slave mentality, a condition where people allow fear and laziness to dictate their existence. And it wasn't just philosophy for him, it was a warning, a call to awaken. Because in a world dominated by weakness, society itself stagnates. Creativity, greatness, and true human potential are sacrificed at the altar of comfort and conformity. Think about the times you've chosen ease over effort, safety over challenge. Nietzsche would not have pitied that choice. He would have condemned it. Weakness in his eyes is a betrayal of the very potential you were born to fulfill. He believed that life is a battlefield, not for the faint-hearted, but for those willing to fight for themselves, to rise stronger with every fall, and to embrace struggle as the furnace of growth. This is the essence of Nietzsche's warning. Weakness is not just a personal flaw. It is a spiritual and existential failure. And while this may feel harsh, it is also liberating. Because the recognition of weakness is the first step toward strength. If you are willing to look in the mirror, confront the parts of yourself that hide behind excuses, and embrace struggle instead of avoiding it, then you are ready to step onto the path of true self-overcoming, the path that Nietzsche considered the only way to live with integrity, power, and purpose. Nietzsche's hatred for weakness goes beyond mere criticism. It is a reflection of his unwavering commitment to the idea of human excellence. Weak people, in his philosophy, are those who allow themselves to be carried by circumstances instead of shaping them. They are not necessarily victims of circumstance, but willing captives of their own fears. They make compromises with life, sacrificing their potential for comfort, and in doing so, they propagate mediocrity not only in themselves, but in the world around them. Nietzsche saw that society often praises meekness, humility, and passivity as virtues, yet he considered these the greatest barriers to human greatness. In the eyes of Nietzsche, strength is not just physical or intellectual. It is moral, spiritual, and existential. A strong person is someone who confronts life's chaos head-on, someone who is willing to challenge their limitations and embrace suffering as a teacher rather than a punishment. Weak people, by contrast, avoid this confrontation. They seek refuge in excuses, in the approval of others, in traditions and norms that shield them from risk. They fear discomfort more than they value growth, and Nietzsche believed this fear is a betrayal of life itself. Every moment spent avoiding struggle is a moment wasted, a chance to forge character, courage, and wisdom left unclaimed. Nietzsche also believed that weak people unintentionally weaken others. They spread a culture of dependency, of complaint, of entitlement. In their pursuit of comfort, they become enforcers of mediocrity, convincing themselves and those around them that struggle is shameful, that ambition is dangerous, that suffering should be avoided at all costs. This, Nietzsche argued, is not compassion, it is spiritual corruption. True compassion, in his view, empowers, challenges, and strengthens. To allow someone to live in weakness without confrontation is not kindness. It is cruelty disguised as mercy. Yet, Nietzsche's disdain for weakness is not hopelessly judgmental. In fact, it is deeply motivating. Recognizing weakness is the first step toward overcoming it. The harsh mirror he holds up is meant to inspire awakening, to remind us that our potential is sacred and fleeting. Each weakness you indulge is a choice to surrender your life to mediocrity. Each excuse is a betrayal of your own capabilities. And yet, awareness is power. When you see where you falter, where you avoid discomfort, where you choose ease over growth, you have the opportunity to break free from the chains of weakness. Nietzsche's philosophy is a call to arms, urging every individual to cultivate the inner strength necessary to confront life's challenges, to embrace adversity as the crucible of greatness, and to reject the seductive lies of comfort. Weakness is not merely a personal failing. It is a spiritual obstacle, a moral compromise, and a betrayal of human potential. The path he offers is not easy. It demands courage, discipline, and relentless self-honesty, but it is the only path to becoming who you were meant to be. When you internalize Nietzsche's lesson, weakness becomes visible in every decision. The temptation to stay comfortable, the fear of challenge, the avoidance of responsibility. And once visible, it can be confronted, challenged, and transformed. This transformation is not just survival, it is transcendence. It is the creation of a life forged in strength, integrity, and purpose. A life that refuses to be dictated by fear, laziness, or conformity. Nietzsche hated weak people not because they were human, but because he saw the greatness that they were willingly throwing away. And his message, ultimately, is clear. Recognize your weakness, confront it, and rise above it, or risk living a life diminished before it even begins. Nietzsche's critique of weakness becomes even more tangible when we examine it in the context of everyday life. Consider the person who complains about their circumstances, but never takes meaningful action. They blame their job, their boss, the economy, or the people around them, yet they refuse to confront the discomfort that real change demands. Nietzsche would call this weakness, not because they are human and flawed, but because they consciously surrender their power to external forces. Every excuse is a small abdication of responsibility, a surrender of their potential to be stronger, smarter, and more capable. The world does not reward excuses. It rewards those who dare to act, even when action is risky, uncomfortable, and uncertain. Weakness in daily life often shows itself in subtle, almost invisible ways. It is the person who fears rejection, and therefore never expresses their true ideas. It is the person who envies success, but never studies or trains to achieve it. It is the person who avoids difficult conversations, tolerates injustice, or compromises their principles for temporary comfort. Nietzsche saw that these small acts of avoidance accumulate into a life constrained, diminished, and dominated by fear. The weak do not recognize the power of their choices. They mistake inactivity for safety, complacency for security, and conformity for peace. In doing so, they quietly sabotage their own greatness. Yet Nietzsche also believed that confronting weakness is not merely a matter of moral discipline, it is a radical act of personal liberation. Every time you face a fear, challenge a limitation, or endure discomfort in the pursuit of growth, you are breaking free from the chains of weakness. Imagine the student who struggles to understand a difficult subject, yet spends hours grappling with it instead of giving up. Imagine the entrepreneur who risks failure, criticism, and financial loss to pursue a bold vision. Imagine the individual who confronts toxic relationships, breaks patterns of self-doubt, and refuses to settle for mediocrity. These acts, small or large, are the embodiment of Nietzsche's philosophy. Strength is forged in struggle, not comfort. Nietzsche's ideas are particularly relevant in a world that often celebrates passivity and superficial success. Social media glorifies instant gratification, comparisons, and popularity, rather than perseverance, hard work, and resilience. People are rewarded for appearing competent, confident, and happy, even when their inner life is dominated by fear and avoidance. Nietzsche despised this facade because it masks weakness and prevents growth. True strength, he argued, requires honesty with oneself, a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths, and the courage to act according to one's highest potential. It is the relentless pursuit of self-mastery, even when the world around you encourages complacency. Weakness, in Nietzsche's philosophy, is therefore not just a personal flaw, it is a philosophical problem. It diminishes life itself. Every moment spent in fear, self-pity, or avoidance is a moment that could have been used to create, to excel, to inspire. Every time we allow weakness to dictate our decisions, we betray not only ourselves but the higher possibilities of human existence. Nietzsche's disdain for the weak is, in essence, a call to awaken, to recognize the power within, to challenge the limits imposed by fear, and to live a life that is not dictated by convenience, comfort, or the opinions of others. Ultimately, Nietzsche's hatred of weak people is not about condemnation, it is about challenge. He forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that life rewards strength, courage, and resilience, and punishes passivity, fear, and indecision. The weak may avoid discomfort today, but in doing so, they risk a lifetime of mediocrity. The strong, on the other hand, embrace struggle as a crucible, a tool for transformation, and a path to fulfillment. Nietzsche's philosophy demands that we see weakness for what it is, a choice, a limitation, and an obstacle to becoming the fullest version of ourselves. Nietzsche's philosophy does not stop at simply criticizing weakness. It offers a vision, a path forward, a way to transcend mediocrity and embrace a higher form of existence. Central to this vision is the idea of the Bermensch, often translated as the Overman or Superman. The Bermensch is not a mythical being, but a concept, a goal for humanity to strive toward. This figure represents the individual who has overcome weakness, self-doubt, and the constraints of societal norms, choosing instead to create their own values and define their own destiny. Unlike those who surrender to fear or comfort, the Bermensch lives intentionally, courageously, and authentically. Self-overcoming, according to Nietzsche, is the process by which individuals confront and conquer their limitations. It is not a one-time achievement, but a continuous practice, a daily commitment to growth. Every obstacle, every hardship, every criticism presents an opportunity to strengthen one's character and expand one's potential. In modern life, self-overcoming can take many forms. A student pushing past frustration to master a difficult subject, an artist experimenting with new forms despite fear of failure, an entrepreneur facing repeated rejection yet refusing to abandon a bold vision. Each act of perseverance, each moment of courage, chips away at weakness and builds resilience. Nietzsche's disdain for the weak becomes particularly meaningful in this context. Weakness is not merely a passive state, it is an active failure to engage with life fully. The person who avoids challenges, seeks comfort, or relies on others to define their values is denying themselves the opportunity to become something greater. Every decision to conform rather than to act independently, every moment of self-pity or fear, distances a person from the path of self-overcoming. In contrast, the Bermensch confronts reality directly, accepts the pain and uncertainty of existence, and transforms these challenges into fuel for growth. This is not about perfection, it is about striving, evolving, and refusing to be ruled by weakness. The practical applications of Nietzsche's philosophy are profound. In relationships, it means confronting difficult conversations honestly rather than avoiding conflict. In work, it means taking responsibility for failures and using them as lessons rather than blaming others. In personal development, it means facing fears, breaking habits that diminish life, and seeking experiences that cultivate strength, wisdom, and resilience. Nietzsche's ideal is not an abstract fantasy, it is a call to live fully, to embrace the discomfort that comes with growth, and to resist the temptation of mediocrity. Yet the path of self-overcoming is not easy. Nietzsche knew that it demands courage, discipline, and relentless honesty. The weak avoid this path because it is uncomfortable, demanding, and uncertain. They prefer security, social approval, or avoidance, but these are illusions that ultimately confine and diminish life. The Bermensch, in contrast, embraces risk, accepts failure as part of growth, and cultivates inner strength that is independent of external validation. By doing so, they transform weakness into power, fear into courage, and limitation into opportunity. Ultimately, Nietzsche challenges us to see weakness for what it truly is, a choice, not a condition. We may not control the circumstances we are born into, the obstacles we face, or the opinions of others, but we always have the power to confront, resist, and rise above our limitations. The Bermensch embodies this principle, not as a distant ideal, but as a practical model for daily life. Every act of courage, every refusal to surrender, every moment spent striving to become stronger and more authentic is a step toward this higher existence. Nietzsche's philosophy is, in essence, a call to radical personal responsibility. Weakness is not simply a flaw, it is a betrayal of one's potential. By rejecting weakness and embracing self-overcoming, we align ourselves with the most profound truths of human existence, that life is meant to be lived boldly, creatively, and fully, that struggle is not an obstacle, but a crucible for greatness, and that the power to transform our lives lies within our choices. The Bermensch is not born. They are made through courage, discipline, and the relentless pursuit of strength. Nietzsche's critique of weakness becomes painfully relevant when we observe the world around us. In every society, there are those who settle for comfort, those who avoid challenge, and those who depend on others for guidance, validation, or permission. These individuals, according to Nietzsche, are trapped by their own fears and insecurities, unable to rise above mediocrity. They live lives constrained by the expectations of others, by conventions, or by a relentless desire to avoid discomfort. In contrast, the strong, the courageous, and the self-determined refuse to be confined. They confront life head-on, embracing struggle as the fuel for growth and the pathway to genuine freedom. In practical terms, weakness manifests in countless ways in modern life. Consider a young professional who refuses to take risks, remaining in a job that drains their spirit because it feels safe. Consider a student who avoids challenging subjects or creative endeavors out of fear of failure. Consider a person in a toxic relationship who refuses to speak their truth, preferring the illusion of stability over authentic connection. Nietzsche would see all of these as examples of weakness, not a temporary flaw, but a fundamental avoidance of life's demands. Weakness, he argues, is a choice, and it is a choice that limits potential, diminishes strength, and leads to regret. The process of overcoming weakness, therefore, requires conscious effort, courage, and self-discipline. It begins with brutal honesty, a willingness to confront the ways in which we hide from challenge or settle for less than our potential. It requires acknowledging fear, self-doubt, and habitual patterns that undermine growth. Nietzsche believed that only by confronting these truths could individuals begin the work of transformation. The strong do not pretend to be fearless, they act in spite of fear. They understand that comfort is not the goal. Excellence, growth, and authenticity are. Nietzsche's philosophy also emphasizes the importance of independence in thought and action. Weak individuals often rely on societal approval, external guidance, or group conformity. They allow the opinions and values of others to dictate their choices, seeking safety and compliance rather than forging their own path. The Bermensch, in contrast, defines their own values, creates their own standards, and lives in alignment with their personal truth. This independence is not arrogance. It is the ultimate expression of self-mastery and courage. It allows one to navigate life with clarity, purpose, and strength, even in the face of opposition or criticism. Modern examples of self-overcoming can be found everywhere. The athlete who rises before dawn to train despite exhaustion, the entrepreneur who invests time and resources in a bold vision despite repeated failures, the artist who exposes their inner vulnerability through creation despite fear of judgment. All of these embody Nietzsche's ideal. They transform struggle into growth, fear into courage, and limitation into opportunity. Each act of resilience chips away at weakness and builds a foundation for greatness. Nietzsche's hatred of weakness is ultimately a call to accountability. It is not cruel or vindictive. It is a recognition of the cost of inaction. Weakness is not a harmless condition. It is a barrier to potential, a drain on energy, and a source of regret. Every moment spent avoiding challenge or seeking comfort is a moment lost in the pursuit of a stronger, fuller, and more authentic life. By rejecting weakness and embracing the discomfort inherent in growth, individuals align themselves with the principles of self-mastery, courage, and personal power. Ultimately, Nietzsche's message is both provocative and liberating. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth. We are responsible for the lives we lead. Weakness is not an inevitable fate, it is a decision we make daily. And the decision to confront fear, embrace struggle, and strive towards self-overcoming is the decision that separates mediocrity from greatness, passivity from purpose, and weakness from strength. By internalizing this philosophy, we are invited to step into a new way of living, one that refuses compromise with comfort, one that turns challenges into catalysts, and one that cultivates strength through deliberate, courageous action. Nietzsche's hatred of weakness is not merely criticism. It is an urgent, uncompromising call to become more than we are, to rise above fear, and to embrace the relentless pursuit of human potential. Nietzsche's philosophy is not confined to abstract thought. It offers concrete guidance for how to live a life of strength, purpose, and resilience. The rejection of weakness is not simply a matter of attitude, it is a lifestyle, a series of deliberate choices, and a set of habits that cultivate courage, independence, and mastery over oneself. Weak individuals drift through life, guided by fear, habit, or the approval of others. The strong, in contrast, act intentionally, shaping their lives according to their highest values and confronting every challenge as an opportunity for growth. One of the central habits Nietzsche champions is self-reflection. Strength begins with awareness, the ability to honestly assess one's own limitations, fears, and tendencies toward comfort or avoidance. The weak evade this reflection, masking their fears with excuses or distractions. The strong, however, confront themselves with brutal honesty. They identify the patterns that hold them back, whether it is procrastination, self-doubt, dependency, or the desire to conform. By seeing themselves clearly, they gain the power to change, to act decisively, and to break free from the invisible chains that limit potential. Discipline is another cornerstone of strength. Nietzsche admired individuals who cultivated their bodies and minds through rigorous practice and repetition. Weakness thrives in indulgence, in a life of passive consumption, and in the surrender to immediate pleasure. The strong, conversely, embrace discomfort as a tool. They wake early, push themselves physically and mentally, and persist in the face of exhaustion, rejection, or failure. Each act of self-discipline strengthens the mind, fortifies character, and transforms fear into resilience. In this way, weakness is not merely resisted, it is actively replaced with habits that build lasting power. Independence, in thought and action, is equally vital. Weak individuals are slaves to the expectations, opinions, and judgments of others. They allow societal pressures to dictate their decisions, fearing disapproval or alienation. Nietzsche challenges us to rise above this dependence. True strength comes from defining our own values, making choices aligned with our personal truth, and acting courageously even when others disapprove. This is not arrogance, it is authenticity. It is the refusal to surrender one's life to the whims of others, and the commitment to live in accordance with one's own highest standards. Nietzsche also emphasizes the importance of embracing struggle as a teacher. Weakness shuns challenge, seeking comfort and predictability. Strength, however, recognizes that adversity is inevitable and uses it as a means of growth. Every setback, every difficulty, every moment of pain becomes a forge in which character is shaped. The strong do not lament their struggles, they harness them, learning resilience, creativity, and fortitude. Life becomes a laboratory for self-overcoming, where every obstacle is transformed into an opportunity to evolve. Finally, Nietzsche advocates for courage and action. Ideas and reflection alone are insufficient. Strength requires execution. The strong take responsibility for their lives, confront fear directly, and act decisively. They understand that the journey toward self-mastery is continuous, and that true courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move forward. Despite it, by integrating these principles into daily life, individuals can transcend weakness and cultivate true power. Self-reflection sharpens awareness, discipline fortifies resilience, independence fosters authenticity, struggle teaches growth, and courage propels action. These are not abstract ideals, they are actionable practices that shape every decision, every habit, and every outcome. Nietzsche's critique of weakness, then, is a profound invitation to reject passivity, to confront fear, and to actively pursue personal transformation. Weakness is not a permanent condition. It is a pattern that can be broken through conscious effort and relentless dedication. By living intentionally, embracing discomfort, and acting in alignment with our highest values, we embody the strength Nietzsche admired, and we transform our potential into reality. In the end, strength is not merely the absence of weakness, it is the conscious cultivation of power, courage, and self-mastery in every moment. Nietzsche's philosophy challenges us to stop excusing mediocrity, to stop hiding behind comfort, and to begin living as the architects of our own destiny. Every choice, every habit, every action becomes an expression of this power. And with each step, weakness loses its grip, and greatness becomes inevitable. The journey toward strength, according to Nietzsche, is not merely a path, it is a battle, a deliberate and relentless confrontation with everything within and around us that seeks to limit our potential. Weakness is seductive. It offers the illusion of safety, comfort, and ease. But Nietzsche warns that succumbing to this illusion comes at a cost: the slow erosion of ambition, the surrender of individuality, and the quiet death of potential. Every moment spent tolerating weakness is a moment wasted, a fragment of life surrendered to mediocrity. Nietzsche's hatred for weakness is not born of cruelty, it is born of urgency. Life is fleeting, and the opportunity to become strong, to become ourselves, is fragile and finite. Those who cling to comfort, who defer growth, who allow fear to dictate choices, fail not just themselves, but the world that they could have changed. Weakness is a thief, robbing us of our creative energy, our courage, and our ability to leave a mark on existence. To rise above it is not a suggestion, it is a moral and existential imperative. To live Nietzsche's philosophy is to embrace the principle of self-overcoming. Every challenge, every failure, every disappointment is an invitation to rise higher than before. Weak individuals collapse under pressure. Strong individuals transform pressure into propulsion. They understand that adversity is not punishment, it is a tool, a raw material from which character is forged. Pain is the anvil, struggle is the hammer, and courage is the fire. Through these, the weak are tempered into strong, the indecisive into resolute, the fearful into fearless. Central to Nietzsche's vision is the idea that strength is not just personal, it is creative. The strong do not merely survive, they shape, innovate, and inspire. They refuse to let their lives be dictated by circumstance, others' expectations, or their own internal doubts. They construct meaning where none exists, create opportunities where none seem possible, and leave behind a legacy that weakness could never conceive. Every act of courage, every moment of deliberate choice, becomes a brushstroke on the canvas of their life, painting a masterpiece that can only be understood by those willing to confront their own mediocrity. Nietzsche's critique of weakness also carries a subtle warning. Strength is a responsibility. It demands vigilance, honesty, and relentless self-discipline. It is easy to admire power from afar, but true strength requires action. It demands that we question our motives, confront our fears, and reject the comforting lies that make passivity bearable. To live without this vigilance is to drift, to be swept along by forces beyond our control, and ultimately to betray the potential within us. Yet, within this harsh philosophy lies a profound source of motivation. Nietzsche does not demand perfection, he demands effort. Each step taken in defiance of weakness is progress. Each habit cultivated, each fear faced, each day lived intentionally, is a triumph. Even small acts of courage accumulate, shaping identity and destiny. Strength is not a distant ideal, it is a daily practice, a series of decisions that, compounded over time, produce extraordinary results. As we close this exploration, the lesson is clear. Weakness is seductive but destructive. Strength is demanding but liberating. The path Nietzsche prescribes is not easy, it is never meant to be. But it is authentic, transformative, and ultimately empowering. By rejecting passivity, embracing discomfort, and acting in alignment with our highest values, we become architects of our destiny. We no longer allow circumstance, fear, or convenience to define us. In the end, Nietzsche's philosophy challenges us to ask a single powerful question every day. Will I succumb to weakness, or will I rise? The answer determines everything. Each choice is a declaration, a refusal to hide, a commitment to grow, and a promise to live with courage, purpose, and intensity. Weakness may whisper, comfort may beckon, but the strong, the awakened, the relentless answer with action. And in that action, life becomes extraordinary.